In late 2016, a specific cluster of physiological symptoms began appearing among government personnel. These events, characterized by localized biophysical anomalies, were categorized as Havana syndrome. These initial reports were centered here, at the United States Embassy in Havana, Cuba. The reported trigger was a localized mechanical ringing or grinding sound, often described as being confined to a specific room or spatial vector. Following this acoustic trigger, individuals experienced a rapid onset of symptoms, extreme vertigo, spatial disorientation, and measurable cognitive degradation. These events did not map to established epidemiological models, representing a class of site-specific biophysical phenomena that lacked an immediate environmental explanation. To investigate the mechanism behind these symptoms, independent medical researchers, including teams from Stanford University, conducted clinical evaluations of the affected personnel. These investigations revealed a central paradox: the presence of genuine, permanent physical brain damage in the victims. This MRI data reveals distinct lesion clusters located within the neural pathways of the brain's white matter. These physical lesions occurred in the absence of any blunt force trauma or kinetic impact to the skull. To understand how structural brain damage occurs without physical impact, we must evaluate the biophysical viability of directed microwave energy as a delivery mechanism for these injuries. We can contextualize these modern events by looking at the documented history of cognitive intelligence gathering in post-9/11 environments. Analog methods of enhanced interrogation relied on environmental stressors like extreme temperature manipulation and sleep deprivation. These methods functioned as systematic tests to determine the specific failure point of human cognitive load. Using these stressors to monitor and document cognitive collapse constituted a structural violation of the common rule, the international standard for protecting human subjects. Beyond the ethical violations, these analog methods possessed a specific operational weakness. They required physical custody of the subject and left a traceable operational footprint. The persistent requirement for results that leave no physical trace suggests a tactical incentive to move from physical environment manipulation to the application of long-range physics. The technological alternative to analog stressors is the use of directed energy, specifically focused microwave frequencies. On the electromagnetic spectrum, the microwave band occupies a range that allows for specific types of energy transmission. Unlike visible light or standard radio waves, concentrated microwave frequencies can be directed as a high-energy beam over significant distances. When these concentrated waves interact with standard architectural barriers, they do not cause physical disruption to the surface. Microfrequencies can penetrate glass, drywall, and masonry, retaining significant localized energy on the other side. This mechanism differs from kinetic weapons, which must structurally destroy a barrier to affect their target. In this model, directed energy systems change the function of cover, treating standard architectural shielding as a permeable medium. When a concentrated microwave beam intersects with human tissue, it triggers a specific biophysical process. These frequencies are absorbed by fluid-dense regions within the human brain, causing rapid thermal expansion in intracranial fluids. This expansion within the rigid skull generates localized thermal elastic pressure waves. This phenomenon is known as the Frey effect or the microwave auditory effect. These internal pressure waves are interpreted by the brain as mechanical sounds, like ringing or clicking, despite the absence of external acoustic energy. The Frey effect provides a mechanical explanation for the isolated acoustic anomalies reported by the personnel in Havana. However, the immediate auditory sensation is only the beginning of the injury profile. Sustained thermal expansion exerts mechanical stress on cellular structures. This process can cook tissue at a microscopic level, warping and fracturing neural pathways to create the microlesions observed in the medical data. The biophysics of directed energy map directly to the Havana syndrome reports, explaining both the auditory hallucinations and the resulting non-kinetic brain injuries. The physiological evidence from Havana matches the known capabilities of directed energy engineering. When comparing historical environmental stressors to directed microwave pulses, the biological target remains the same. Both methods ultimately seek to degrade the same neural networks, moving the application of stress from the room the subject is in to the brain itself. This marks a transition from facility-based environmental control to remote, non-kinetic targeting. The strategic advantage of this shift is its reduced signature, the ability to neutralize a target without leaving a kinetic footprint. A weapon system capable of inducing neurological damage from a distance necessitates a shift in global defense strategy. Physical security protocols are limited against non-kinetic vectors that penetrate standard structural materials. This creates a requirement for specialized electromagnetic shielding to protect high-value assets. Deterrence is complicated by the use of invisible frequencies, which are difficult to trace or attribute to a specific actor. Geography is no longer the final perimeter of security. The human neural network now represents a point of vulnerability to remote interference. In the escalating paranoia of the Cold War, the United States government pursued the human mind as the ultimate theater of conflict. To capture this territory, the CIA launched a highly classified systematic initiative known as MK-Ultra. The objective was absolute cognitive control. This was a massive, institutionally backed enterprise, operating with the full weight and unlimited budget of the United States intelligence apparatus. In 1957, a key node of this program opened in Montreal, Canada. The Allen Memorial Institute operated as a prestigious psychiatric facility where ordinary citizens sought help for common conditions like minor anxiety or postpartum depression. Instead of receiving standard treatment, these patients were absorbed into the MK-Ultra network as involuntary human test subjects in a program designated as Sub-Project 68. The architect of this specific project was Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, a psychiatrist who held top positions in global psychiatric associations. The CIA obscured their involvement by cycling capital through a front organization called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology, which deposited the funds directly into McGill University's Sub-Project 68. Dr. Cameron weaponized clinical psychiatric practices, turning the tools of healing into instruments of interrogation. Cameron utilized a specific two-phase psychological methodology to systematically erase and then attempt to reprogram the adult mind. Phase 1 of Cameron's protocol was termed depatterning. The clinical hypothesis driving this phase suggested that mental illness could be permanently cured if a patient's existing thoughts, behaviors, and memories were completely wiped away, reducing the brain to a cognitive blank slate. The primary tool used to force this erasure was electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. While standard ECT was a tightly regulated treatment used sparingly for severe depression, Dr. Cameron pushed the procedure far past any recognized safety limits. A single shock of 150 volts was sent directly through the skull, violently disrupting the brain's electrical activity. These shocks were administered in rapid succession, sometimes 2 to 3 times every single day. The repetition of this high-voltage trauma physically destabilized the brain's neural networks, causing the biological process of memory consolidation to break down. To prevent the brain from healing between these assaults, Cameron introduced prolonged chemical comas. Patients were moved to the sleep room, where they were heavily sedated with a cocktail of barbiturates to block any chance of cognitive recovery. Some patients were kept in these drug-induced comas for up to 86 consecutive days. The immediate result was severe and permanent retrograde amnesia. Phase 1 successfully reduced adult patients to a blank, infantile state, where they forgot how to walk, how to speak to their families, or how to perform the basic functions of daily life. Phase 2, a process Cameron called psychic driving, attempted to install new thoughts onto the erased mind. The goal was to forcibly replace the patient's original personality with new behavioral patterns. This reprogramming required absolute pharmacological immobilization. Patients were injected with curare, a highly potent paralytic agent. Curare strips away the physical flight response, locking down limbs and motor functions while leaving the patient fully conscious. Trapped inside their paralyzed bodies, patients were exposed to a continuous stream of audio reprogramming. The audio was delivered using physical hardware like this Royal reel-to-reel tape recorder. Cameron recorded verbal messages, often repeating the patient's own insecurities or new behaviors. These tapes were looped and played back hundreds of thousands of times. To isolate the senses, patients were fitted with blackout goggles and specialized headphones tightly secured to their heads. This created a perfectly closed sensory loop with no avenues for physical movement or psychological escape. When the brain is overwhelmed by inescapable sensory trauma and denied any physical exit, it creates an internal escape. This forced fracturing, partitioning the identity into walled-off sections to survive the input, defines the mechanism of trauma-based dissociation. Cameron's methodology provided the evidence that severe, inescapable trauma forces the human mind to fracture to survive. This system of controlled psychological torture operated with complete impunity for over 2 decades. By 1973, as whispers of these programs leaked to the press, institutional panic set in at the CIA. Sidney Gottlieb, the director of MKUltra, ordered the entire archive of documents permanently destroyed to avoid legal or historical accountability. Following the purge, the government assured the public that all such operations had ceased and the evidence was entirely gone. A small cache of fragmented, misfiled financial records survived the incinerator, leaving a paper trail that proved the existence and funding of Subproject 68. The mass destruction of these records shielded the CIA from legal liability and obscured a monumental scientific failure. The data proved that the human mind cannot be formatted or rewritten like a digital drive. The Allen Memorial Institute still stands in Montreal, a mundane exterior hiding a history of profound trauma. The victims of Dr. Cameron's protocol suffered total psychological devastation. The cognitive loss was permanent. The erased memories and fragmented identities were never fully recovered. Extreme voltage, chemical comas, and forced sensory loops succeeded in achieving destruction, but they failed to achieve control. Survivors and their families are still engaged in legal battles for recognition from the institutions that funded their erasure. Subproject 68 confirmed that the human brain is a complex organic network, not a storage device that can be wiped and re-recorded. These experiments reveal the danger of prioritizing weaponized psychology over fundamental clinical ethics. The history of the Allen Memorial experiments provides the definitive evidence that when science attempts to forcefully conquer the mind, it succeeds only in destroying it. Your smartphone functions as a behavioral modification engine, refined through decades of psychological research and surveillance data. We have entered the era of cognitive warfare, where the human mind serves as the primary battlefield. Algorithms now process every tap and scroll to construct individualized reality feeds. These streams are designed to harvest data and manipulate emotional responses in real time. Modern systems bypass the need for physical force. The target population carries and interacts with the programming device by choice, rendering the coercive labs of the past redundant. The official record states that programs like MKUltra were shut down and their files destroyed in 1973. Modern evidence suggests a different trajectory. Whistleblowers and leaked patents point to a continuous, clandestine effort to influence human consciousness through more advanced means. The pursuit of psychological control didn't end. It migrated from visible laboratories into the invisible architecture of digital networks. During the Cold War, intelligence agencies relied on blunt force trauma to attempt to rewrite the human psyche. The architects of these programs operated with a clinical indifference to the suffering of their subjects. They utilized sensory deprivation, chemical comas, and extreme sleep rooms on unwitting citizens to test the limits of psychological endurance. The Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal served as a central hub for these devastating experiments. The patients targeted in these rooms suffered the permanent destruction of their memories and personalities. These physical methods ultimately proved inefficient for the creators. The tactics were too visible and too violently unpredictable to deploy on a mass scale. Intelligence doctrine holds that an objective for control is never abandoned. It is only refined into a more efficient system. This refinement led to the integration of nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, and cognitive science, or NBIC. NBIC merges organic neural pathways with digital data nodes, allowing agencies to write ideas directly into the mind. Technologies like remote neural monitoring and synthetic telepathy use curated algorithms to subliminally alter emotional states, keeping subjects locked in loops of rage or isolation. Controlling a subject's informational environment removes the requirement for a physical cell. A direct lineage connects Cold War experiments to modern directed energy anomalies, such as the symptoms observed in Havana. For the survivors of the Allen Memorial Institute, the trauma inflicted decades ago remains an open wound. Their families are currently engaged in legal battles to force governments to acknowledge these crimes and declassify the remaining records. This ongoing fight demonstrates that institutions still view human beings as collateral damage in the pursuit of intelligence. These survivors serve as a warning of what occurs when power operates in total secrecy. The forced torture of the 1950s has been succeeded by the voluntary submission of the modern public to algorithms. Invisible code and dopamine reward loops have taken the place of concrete basements and file incinerators. The architects have cloaked their conditioning so effectively that the resulting behavior feels like independent free will. The greatest trick was not convincing the world that the experiments ended. It was convincing the public that they are not currently in the lab.